I survived 200 days in Minecraft Bedrock. My main goal is to get as rich and OP as possible and turn my starter home inside this mountain peak into an impenetrable base. Also, please subscribe. We just passed 3,000 subscribers and we're aiming for 5,000. Without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. I began trying to remember what items I had in this world. It turns out I'm actually pretty broke, so I prepared some chests and headed to the end dimension. I spent all of day 102 raiding end cities for all that delicious loot and killing every shulker that I could find for shulker shells. To complete my goal of becoming as rich and overpowered as possible, I needed Silent Whisper's general mob farm. The resource list is pretty insane for me to be building it early game, but it gives out 11,000 items per hour. I started collecting all the resources needed for the farm. Luckily, I recorded this video in 1.19, and cobwebs could still be turned into 9 pieces of string. I went to the Badlands biome next to the stronghold and found a jungle temple with the worst loot ever. But there was a mineshaft just outside, and I took as many cobwebs as I could. For scaffolding, I need bamboo and string. With the string taken care of, I flew down to the bamboo forest next to my starter house and spent the rest of day 104 collecting bamboo. So on day 105, I flew over to the iron/gold farm I made in the first 100 days video and I AFK'd. I only waited until day 106 before checking on the storage system, but oh boy did I mess up. The looting free was doing so well that I was collecting items so fast that the collection system was backing up with gold swords. So I spent the next 3 days underneath the gold farm at the storage area, removing all of the gold swords that would back up when the collection chest was getting full. Thankfully, with the iron farm running at the same time, by day 109, I had enough resource blocks to make a full beacon. I flew over to the Acacia village, set up the beacon next to a small hill, and then started destroying the inside of it. This farm also needs over 13 stacks of glass, and only one of my villagers sells glass. That meant I had to go and destroy a desert. And to smelt the sand, I needed a few furnaces. So I went and destroyed a bit of a stony area, and then set up a basic smelting area next to the lava pool where my nether portal was. Day 112 rolled around, and the sand still hadn't finished smelting. So I flew back to the Acacia village for dirt and spruce saplings, and started chopping down large spruce trees back on the island because I would need a lot of trapdoors later. Eventually, all the glass finished smelting, and I had all the signs on the resource list, so I flew back to the Acacia village to get started on collecting the next resource. I saw a wandering trader, but it magically despawned. I have flown over a massive coral reef hundreds of times, but a farm would be better in the long term, so I decided to make JC Plays Coral Fan Farm. Day 114 was spent gathering all the materials and trading with villagers. The big problem was that I didn't have anywhere close to enough bone meal to power the farm for the amount of coral fans that I would need. So I spent days 116 and 117 in a cycle of going to the nether to collect bone blocks, putting the bone meal in the dispensers, AFKing the farm, seeing that I didn't have enough coral fans, and then repeating. The items needed for the roof were so much easier to get. I needed over 17 stacks of slabs and 11 stacks of solid blocks. I went back into the hill where the beacon was and quickly collected those items. I already had all the leaves from day 112 when I was waiting for the glass to smelt, and I was chopping down the spruce trees. To have all the items for the mob farm, I spent days 120 to 122 flying around collecting various items, smelting more sand, and accidentally putting my overpowered bow in the furnace. I also went to the nether, and I forgot that I still had my face as a texture pack for the gas, which was kind of funny. I also got several tridents and enchanted them. Days 124 to 137 were spent following Silent Whisper's tutorial and building the general mob farm.
Yeah, you manifest. You can be the King Kong banging on your chest. You can beat the world, you can beat the war. You can talk to God, go banging on his door. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks. You can be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you go find yourself. Standing in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. 'Cause you burn with the first flame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. You can go the distance, you can run the mile, you can walk.
And everything was going great until day 133 when I tried to throw the tridents into the trident killers. The tridents I had could not be used in the farm because one had Riptide 3 on it and the other had loyalty. The rest of day 133 and 134 was spent me resource gathering because I needed more lapis to re-enchant the trident.
And the world's gonna know your name. 'Cause you burn with the first flame. And the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be a champion. Be a champion. Be a champion.
I spent day 135 building the roof of the farm, and just when I thought everything was coming together, on day 136, I found 2 mistakes. I managed to build the water column 1 block too high, which messed up the redstone column for the on and off switch for the trident killers. Then, I also noticed that the magma blocks were in the wrong place, meaning I wasn't killing any baby mobs, and I wasn't collecting any items, and they were all backing up. Also, annoyingly to add to my bad luck, I saw a wandering trader and it despawned. Putting all that behind me, on day 137, I added in a really basic item collection system and then spent the rest of the day AFKing at the farm to make sure that it was all working correctly. To complete my second goal of turning my starter home inside this mountain peak into an impenetrable base, I needed to split this big project into 4 smaller parts. Part 1 was building a main entrance that can only be accessed from a landing pad on the outside of the mountain that leads to a cave walkthrough. Part 2 involves a wall and defenses around the perimeter of my base to stop the hostile mobs from being able to enter it. Part 3 involves adding in little camping areas around the base that will hide important areas, such as my storage room and any little farms that I want to put in around my base. And last but not least, part 4 is adding in lots of wheat around the remaining areas to make it look incredibly pretty when everything is finished. So to get started, in the Acacia Village, I made a safe zone where I could chop down trees. I then spent day 138 to 140 chopping down spruce trees, oak trees, and collecting some cobblestone. I took a small break on day 140 to watch a wandering trader despawn. I traveled to the dripstone caves under the mountains that spawned, but I quickly realized it would be too dark. So I flew back to brew some night vision potions. Days 141 and 142 were spent underground. I collected dripstone and various items from one of the prettiest lush caves that I've ever seen. Once I'd finished collecting resources, I flew back to the starter house. There was a small hole in the mountainside that I wanted to use for the walkthrough because it would help with the realistic feel with it actually being a cave. After breaking through to the other side, I began texturizing the cave by adding moss blocks, spore blossoms, and azalea trees. I also added hidden lighting with lanterns and glowberries. I made the landing pad out of spruce trapdoors and spruce fences with a lantern underneath the trapdoors to show where to land at night. I wanted the pathways of the area to follow the flow of the surrounding terrain. So I added dark oak stakes from the entrance of the walkthrough to a flatter area on the side of the mountain and terraformed the mountain just a little bit to make sure that the staircase fit in a bit more naturally. The terrain on the next section was a bit steep for a natural pathway and it actually came out a little bit far. So I decided to add in a secondary cave through it, keeping the natural pathway going, but adding in smaller details like glowberries and spore blossoms so it matched the other cave. After a bit of terraforming around the lake, I was able to complete the path from the cave to the starter house. With this finished, that meant part 1 of this project was complete. Now to move on to part 2. Days 148 to 142 were spent making the defense wall at the bottom of the snow layers around the perimeter of the mountain. Other than the main entrance from the cave walkthrough and a floodgate over the waterfall, the rest of the wall would follow the same pattern. Throughout this time period, a couple of wandering traders despawned before I could trade them. I saw my favorite mob in the game. So I flew to get a lead and posted it up at my base. Whoever comes up with the best name for this Arctic Fox will have this Arctic Fox name that in the next 300 days video. As I finished the wall on day 160, I noticed that it actually wasn't very bright and could actually spawn mobs on it. So I spent the next 2 days trading with villagers to get more lanterns, collecting moss carpet, and then placed hidden lighting on the snowy side of the wall. Now that part 2 is finished, it already makes a huge difference to the way that this base looks. I chose an area close to the starter house for the first tent to go and terraformed the area around it. I collected sand and gravel for concrete powder and wool from the sheep farm. For the tent, I used a design I found by Block Creations on Instagram, and I made very subtle changes just to make it suit my style and the area that I'm in. A campfire was added around the side for decoration, and the natural path was extended down the mountain to connect this to the starter house. Having finished the tent, I wanted to get bubble columns sorted for the hidden storage room. I collected a magma block and a soul sand block from the nether, got some ice from the nearby frozen ocean, and began mining out the chute. I ran out of spruce wood to decorate the walls, so I flew back to the acacia village to collect some more, where 2 wandering traders despawned pretty much at the same time. Once I had enough spruce wood collected, I swapped the stone for spruce logs, added in the soul sand and magma blocks, and broke the ice to finish the water column. Instead of being smart and moving my chest down into the newly made storage area, I spent all of day 170 moving them about 50 blocks to another part of the base so that I could get started on the second tent. The area that I chose was next to the upper lake. I had to collect some cacti to make the cyan color that I wanted. Then I made the framework, terraformed the area, and added in the cyan wool and concrete blocks. I decided regular lanterns wouldn't fit the theme of this tent, so I flew to the nether, got some soul sand, made some soul lanterns, and added them to the outside of the tent. I spent the next 3 days making a small fishing dock and a natural path from the new tent to an intersection outside of my starter home. However, earlier on day 176, a wolf killed my Arctic Fox. It was at that moment I declared war on all wolves in this world. Now that part 3 is officially finished, that only leaves part 4 left of the plan. I started by planting the wheat seeds that I did have, but it wasn't even close to being enough to complete the task. I went to the nearby villages to collect all the wheat seeds that I could. Back at my starter home, I continued adding as many wheat seeds as I could, adding hidden lighting and spending the nights AFKing at the general mob farm. These bones would be turned into bone meal. I would then use these bones to bone meal the seeds, collect them using the fortune tree hoe, plant all the seeds again, and then spend the night AFK at the general mob farm. From day 182, I began terraforming the steep sections of the mountain so that it descended slower towards the starter house. I continued with the wheat seed bone mealing, placing, and general mob farm AFKing. On day 185, I moved the already moved chest down into a temporary space down in the storage room. Something that I should have done on day 170. But this day was cool, because I got to see an invisible wandering trader despawn. I continued with the wheat seed placing and got a beautiful view of the base, but it did show the scale of the project and just how daunting it was. From day 187 to 191, my Minecraft life consisted of tilling the grass, making sure it was saturated with water, and then placing wheat seeds. I broke a spruce log, and the water from a slab that I had waterlogged previously spilled down the mountainside and broke all of the wheat seeds that I had placed at the top of the mountain. After fixing my mistake, more wheat placing progress happened. However, I did take a break as day 194 was coming to a close. I realized I needed a lot more spruce wood and a lot more cobblestone, so I spent that night chopping down spruce and mining cobblestone. Days 195 to 198 were spent frantically doing the same thing that I was the previous day, tilling the grass, placing water with hidden lighting, and placing the wheat seeds. During the night of day 197, I had one of the worst jump scares of my life. I was so in the zone that a phantom made me absolutely jump out of my skin, so I decided to go to sleep. But even worse than that, I ran out of lanterns the next day, and I only had one villager that traded for lanterns. So I had to do an AFK session overnight at the iron farm. With the understanding that I wasn't going to be able to fully complete my goals for these 200 days, I slowed down and I started admiring my area around the base. And almost as if it was scripted, after night had fallen, on the late minutes of day 199, it began to rain, which meant at the top of the mountain, it was snowing, and all the leaves of the surrounding area turned into a beautiful snowy white. I watched a wandering trader despawn, and then perched myself on top of the trees to watch the snow falling towards my base. And although it won't be fully complete, this shows how beautiful the base will look, and it gave me motivation to get it done by the end of 300 days. Just because you're not always able to complete something doesn't mean that during the journey of it that you're not able to appreciate just how far you've come. And it's moments like this that make you realize just how amazing what you can do is. The final day was spent trying to add in as much wheat as I could before the end of the day. I took one final look of the area that I'd managed to transform, and it was at this moment that I wanted to say a massive thank you to you if you're still watching the video at this point. And with that being said, it's time to draw a close on this 200-day Minecraft Bedrock adventure. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, like the video, share it with other people, and leave a comment saying 300 days. If you enjoyed this video and you want to recap the first 100 days, or if you haven't even seen them, please click the video on your screen right now.